let's just say that again, because I don't know, is that true?
Yeah, talk us through them.
So there's Mum, there's Dad, there's Grandad, there's Mick, there's Nan, there's me, there's Rich there, and Jim and Paul. So Mum's 5 children, really, with their Nan and Grandad. Here's me and Mick. It's not a very good photo, but you can just about see the two of us. And as I've said before, I always did feel a closeness to him, and I always knew that he was Mum's, and I never questioned that really. I never kind of thought, oh, why does he live here and we live there, and so on. Somehow it just fitted together in my child's mind.
Did you ever call him your brother to anyone that asked?
I think I often did. I would often say, I would often say, oh, I've got a half-brother who's older than me. All of us carry stories, don't we? Some we love to tell and others we need to tell, and even if they're harder to tell. There were elements of the story that I felt quite clear on, but there were other bits of it that I thought I really need to get a few more pieces of the puzzle put together before the people that know also die. So my mum had one older sister, and I thought I need to write to her and say, can you tell me everything you know? So she says, yes, Bells, I do understand how you feel about wanting to know about your family before it's too late and there's nobody left to ask. Well, I will tell you all that I know regarding Mick. This is Mick, 6.5 months old, and that's Mum.
She looks so young.
She does. So she just would have been 17 and a half. I'm afraid that 45 years ago, a young girl of 16 had absolutely no say, and the parents' decision was final. I remember my Nan. I felt she displayed great care of him. She was very attentive of him. She liked to make sure that he had everything he needed, that he was well fed, that the immersion heater was on so he could have a bath when he wanted it. Actually, she treated him like a mum. And in a way, of course, he was a son that she never had. It was decided that Mum should go into an unmarried mother's home, and after 6 weeks, the baby would be adopted. So they called my Nan. And my Nan came and brought him home. And that was how he ended up being at home. So that was never the plan. The plan was always that he was going to be adopted.
I feel like you really can see the proof of, how much your grandparents loved him, just by how many...
Totally.
How many pictures there are.
Totally. That was never, ever in question. It was never in question to me. I never felt as though they're somehow expending some obligation or whatever. I never felt that. I always felt a genuine love for him and a genuine care for him. And to me it all seemed to be about what are the family and neighbours going to think, not what is best for Chrissy and the baby. I actually don't think that Mum would have said, I don't want to take Mick. I don't think that. And my mum, raised Mick for the first 7 years as his mum. This was the house where I was born. So my mum and dad married in February 1962, and I was born in January 1963. They came to my nan and granddad's for Christmas. It was a really cold winter, so they ended up staying. I ended up being born here, and then because it was cold, we ended up remaining with them until February. So we were with them for, close to 2 months. And I've thought about that so many times. What was that like for an 8-year-old boy whose mum had left the home a year ago to be married,
had returned to the family home pregnant with me, had me, and then for that kind of short window we'd all been together, a family together, and then I had gone with mum and dad. But he'd stayed. And oh my goodness, I've thought about that so many times. And talking about even just talking about a kind of a sadness around Mick, I think there is some residual sadness in me that actually kind of, because in a way there's a sense of guilt. Why was I the child that got taken to the family home and remained with mum and dad, and he didn't.
I was probably 6, Mick was 13, I think Uncle Jimmy was 3.5, not 2.5. And they came, so Mick and our nan and granddad came for Christmas. And I just remember thinking to myself, I think this is meant to be a happy time, but somehow it just didn't feel like that. It was at this point that Mick was being formally adopted by, my nan and granddad, our nan and granddad. So that's Karen's mum and dad, and obviously our nan and granddad. But legally at this point he's mum and dad. And I remember being acutely aware of the fact that actually, that ought to have been mum.
But it is also very clear in my mind that actually the closer to 30 that he was getting, actually the further he was pulling away.
And I know that she used to write to him, even when he had pulled back, and he would always write these really sweet, affectionate birthday cards. That was the one time of the year that he would communicate with her. I think there was a love, a bond between them, and I think it I think it held in a way, and I think he will know in his heart that he was loved by her, even though he was also failed by her.
She died, prematurely at 61. Uncle Paul managed to get hold of him, track him down, speak to him and say, look, Mum she's dying, she's going to die. And Mick just lost it. He just wept and wept on the phone, but he just couldn't come and didn't come.
I don't think really there's any question in my mind that actually what was finally settled upon actually, didn't end up in any ways being the best thing at all. And I think what I really wanted before Mum died, what I really wanted was for her just to acknowledge that.
I think the last proper time that I saw him actually was after Mum had died, and she'd been cremated, and we took half of her ashes were buried in Kent, and we brought the other half and buried them at Nan and Granddad's grave. And I just saw him and burst into tears, and I can remember him saying, oh, come here, and we just hugged. And I said, I've just come because I want you to know where Mum is. I've just put some of her ashes in Nan and Granddad's grave. And I wanted him just to know that.
I was so sorry that it just wasn't managed differently, wasn't managed better. So I wanted him to know that. I wrote that down, conveyed that, as well as my love for him and our love for him. But I knew that wasn't. I knew that was only just a tiny part. That really, who that really needed to come from was Mum. Again, you can say sorry without assuming all the blame. She wasn't entirely to blame. Of course she wasn't. She was 16, 17. She didn't have a voice. She didn't have the kind of say that she would have had in this day and age. So she wasn't entirely to blame, but you can still be really terribly sorry for the way that things worked out.
I would love to be in a room with Mick. I'd love it if Jim and Paul, Uncle Rich is in a slightly different place. I know that they would also love to be able to say to him, You have always mattered to us. It doesn't matter how much distance you've attempted to put between us. It has never felt like that to us. I don't intend to write him out of my story. Even if he, for whatever reason, hasn't managed so far to kind of, keep us a part of his.
Upon reading through the letter, I've omitted some part which I think may have some significant bearing on Mick's feelings. On more than one occasion, he told me that one day when Chrissy got married, he was going to live with her in a house with a garden where he could have a swing and play football. This little boy's dreams of living with Chrissy never materialised, so one doesn't really know what goes on in a young child's mind, and if this has some bearing on the situation today.
Do you remember a number of times Mum saying, she'd had a dream, and in this dream we were all of us living together, Mick and all of us, and that would have been a reflection maybe of her own regret that actually she hadn't been able to say at the time, no, I am going to take Mick. What do we do? What do we do with Mick and the fact that he's missing? It's a kind of it's a peculiar bereavement, really. It's it's a loss, which is different to a death or a divorce or something like that. It's just a kind of it's like an enforced estrangement. Yeah, it's an enforced estrangement, and you don't want it, but you have to go with it.
I would say that those are my mum's hands. And certainly, whoever it is, he just looks very kind of comfortable, doesn't he? Very at ease, really, really enjoying just kind of messing about in the sunshine.
It's a lovely picture.
It is a really lovely picture. Yeah, love that one.